All right, boys and girls, we're going to do a little bit of a history lesson here, technologically wise. This is what we call a cassette tape. And back in the late 70s through the 80s and into the early 90s, this was a way for you to listen to music from your favorite band. This happens to be a band called Aerosmith. Pretty famous band from Boston. And yeah, if you can kind of see inside there, there's little spools of electromagnetic tape, and you would put it in a player. One of the big reasons we were excited about cassette tapes back then was that a lot of cars had cassette tape players. So rather than listening to what the radio chose to play for you, if you were a big Aerosmith fan, you could go in and play your favorite Aerosmith song in your car as you're driving along, and that was a very big change. I know it seems strange to you now, but before that, all you could do was hope that the radio played a song that you liked, okay? Now, a cassette, when you were at home, you would play on a thing called a cassette deck or a cassette player. And that's this machine here, okay? And if you get to work with this machine, there's a power button here. Of course, if I turn the power off, the lights all go away. And since it's a mechanical device for music, you actually have to push this button. Let's see, there was a cassette tape in there already. Sometimes the cassettes would face up. Sometimes they would face down. If you put it the wrong way, it doesn't close. But this one here, I'm going to put in face down and close the door. And now here's the thing is, you can see on this cassette that all of the tape is wound down onto this side. All the brown circle there you can kind of see. That's the tape has been wound to that side, which actually means it usually has to be on the left. That means this is ready to play side 2 instead of side 1, okay? This cassette right here is actually somewhere in the middle. You can see that there's brown tape on both sides here. So since I want to listen to one of my favorite songs called Toys in the Attic, what I'm going to have to do is rewind, okay? So this button here with these arrows here, I push, and you can kind of hear a noise. And what's happening is motors inside here, little wheels, little gears, almost like on your bicycle, are spinning super fast, winding that tape so that it all goes back onto this left side. And I heard it stop. And so now I'm ready to hit play. One more thing I like to do when I'm hitting play before is these numbers here you might be looking at going like 9,594 or whatever that says. If I click reset, excuse me, it goes back to 0. So now as I play, I can kind of keep track of where my songs are. So if I was in the middle, wanted to play a song somewhere in the middle of the cassette tape, if I kept track of the tape counter, I could find that spot by pushing the fast forward or rewind button on this thing, okay? Let's see, over here we have our mixer, which allows us to actually play the music. And so I'm going to make sure, excuse me, that this is on. And I've got my speakers on over here on top of the cabinet. These are just regular old computer speakers. We might change that later. Okay, but I'm going to push the play button. Usually there's about 5 seconds of what we call blank tape, no sound. And then you should start seeing lights here as the tape starts playing. All right, got ourselves some Aerosmith. All right, pretty cool. And if I push stop, of course the music stops. Say somebody came in and said, "Oh, I love that song, I want to hear the beginning again." I would push the rewind button and take it back to the beginning, hit play, and it would start over. Of course, since it's mechanical, sometimes it takes longer to rewind. And here should be the beginning entry, opening of Toys in the Attic. All right, there it is. But what if I want to see the second song? I'm just going to push the fast forward button, and guys, I'm just going to kind of guess. It won't take me exactly to the beginning of the next track, so every now and again I'll hit stop. Okay, so that was the beginning of the next song, I can tell, because I've listened to it before. Let's see if I can get the end. Let's see, stop, rewind. So this is about the end of Toys in the Attic, the first song. So I'll fast forward a little bit. You can see this is kind of awkward versus being able to skip right from one song to the other. It's just kind of a very primitive way of playing your music. But remember, back in, say, 1978, the early 1980s, this was the very, best way, most compact and convenient way. Again, something this size, you could stick in the pocket of your, your shorts or your, your t-shirt or something, and hand it to a friend when you got in their car or you got to their house and say, hey, listen to this new tape that I just bought. All right. By the way, one of these would cost anywhere from, if it was older music that nobody really liked anymore, it would probably be like, $4 or $5, up to like $8, $9, $10 for a cassette. In today's money, that would be like $20. So if you wanted to hear your favorite band's album, the whole thing, you would end up paying the equivalent of maybe $20 in today's money, so you could listen to that music over and over again, play it in your car, play it in your bedroom or at your house. Okay? So you have a chance to play around with some of these cassette tapes and try to get them to play. All right, learn how this cassette deck works. By the way, this is the case what a cassette would come in. It's kind of a plastic box like this. You hold it on the sides here and it lifts up and the cassette fits in here. This magnetic tape here is actually kind of fragile. If you scratch it up, or it can actually break too. So when you're not using the tapes, you'd usually put them inside this box, which again was still small enough to put in your pocket. And they had little briefcases you could put tons of these guys in when you had a whole collection. It was still a lot smaller than playing vinyl albums. All right, so you can take some of these cassettes out, eject. Put the cassette in, make sure that the spool is rewound all the way to the left side, and hit play, and see if you can make some music happen. Some kind of old jazz or blues playing on there now. Alright? So, have some fun, ask your teacher if you have any questions, and this is how we use a cassette deck. One more thing, and you can see that the tape here has actually gotten crinkled up and sort of fallen apart. Sometimes when you have an old tape, these little spools here don't work so well. They get stuck, and the tape spins on one side but not the other. And of course, you can imagine this is probably not going to work so good in terms of playing music. We call it, what would happen sometimes is this cassette tape would get stuck inside the cassette player, and it would all get, you'd open up your deck and you'd pull it out and there'd be like a big pile of spaghetti of this tape here. And we used to call that the cassette deck ate my tape. And sometimes, especially if it broke, it was basically ruined and you'd have to buy a new one. But in this case, if I take a pencil and I stick it in here, I should be able to rewind it, and hopefully I can get this tape to come back to life. Hold on, why they invented it this way. But if you look, a pencil fits perfectly in here. And if I rewind this tape, I actually want to keep a little bit of tension on there, make sure it doesn't get twisted as I'm spinning it back in here. But I can pull the tape back up. Here you can kind of see the bottom of that little loop of tape there getting pulled in. And now I think you can see, now my shadow is sort of in the way, as I spin my pencil, it's spinning the other side. So I'm kind of like rewinding it manually using the old pencil trick, which I'm sure your parents or grandparents knew about. All right? So if it does stop playing and you notice when you open it up that there looks like a bunch of spaghetti coming out of the tape deck, call your teacher over and let's see if we can rescue the tape. Some of these things are 20, 30, 40 years old, so they might not work mechanically as well as they did when they were bought new.